and girls, all of them had hair of gold.
Can you hear it?
Like their mother, the youngest one in curls.
All right.
It's a story of a man named Brady who was busy with 3 boys of his own.
We listen to music
They
while it
were
populates.
4 men living all together, yet they were all alone. Till the one day when the lady and they knew that it was much more than a hunch. Left this group must somehow form a family.
So you gotta do the whole thing.
We all became the Brady Bunch. The Brady.
All right. Well, thank you out there in social equity land for joining us. We used to use that theme song for the Meta Town Halls from April.
Dimitri, speak up a little bit. No, we can't hear you. No sound. Want to go ahead and take it over, Caleb, real quick?
Sure. Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for week 9 of the META Social Equity Applicant Mentorship Program. We got a great panelists brought together here of industry experts to talk about HR. So that's going to be the topic of the hour. Yes, we can, Dimitri. There we go.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Caleb. Thank you, and for introducing our subject matter. So this is the 10th, or what module are we in here, Caleb?
Number 9.
We're number 9, and if you look on our website, we're going to have 16 total, each about 2 hours of bird's eye overview information about the cannabis industry that you need to know about before or after you apply for your social equity license. Then on top of that, we're going to have in-person gatherings where we have the mentors and panelists get together with the social equity applicant teams. We're also going to have another 20 to 30 hours worth of deep dive information available on the website where companies spend an hour talking about their history in the cannabis industry and how they might be able to help you and give you further information. So there's going to be a ton of information all available on the META's website, all for free, all intentionally designed to help social equity applicants in the industry get into the industry, but we're finding we're helping a lot of other people. We're getting emails and texts and all kinds of stuff about how people are learning this, using this course to learn how the industry works and to see if there's a place for them in the industry. So it's fantastic what we're doing here, and we really appreciate the panelists and the companies participating. Again, thank you to Weedmaps, thank you to Copper State, thank you to Zuber Lawler and Southfield Community College, all for supporting this project. We're getting tremendous nationwide support. We talked to the New York Times today, so we'll see where that goes. And they really appreciate Copper State's sense of community and corporate responsibility. So thank you again, Copper State, for your support of this project to help pull people up by their bootstraps. Real quick, a couple other administrative stuff. Events next Wednesday. We're having kind of like open mic night, one of those Zoom meetings where everybody can talk and introduce themselves. So please share that. And we're going to be talking about manufacturing and cultivation opportunities as subleasing licenses in the state of Arizona and how there's 130 of those available of each of those and what that means and what kind of opportunities that's going to create. So that's going to be a really exciting, informative thing next Wednesday. Again, it's free. April 28th is the grand date that we're bringing back live in-person META events, which is very exciting, and all indicators are such that we'll be fine. And if you don't, if you want to sample large crowds, you can just go out to bars on Saturday night anyway. So, but it's going to be a live event, and we'll see how that goes. So, save that date right now. All right. So, anything else administratively? Real quickly, let me introduce our 4. We have 4 of our. We have a lot of co-hosts and organizers and people behind the scenes that are helping put together all this information in this package. And if I left out anything, please include it and remind people who you are. Let's start with Dr. Barbara from Scottsdale Community College.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Barbara Crockett from Scottsdale Community College. I am the program director for our cannabis business program. So all the stuff you're learning here with Nita, we are going to do a deeper dive in our classes. They are online, they're 8 weeks. You can do them on your own time. And we have another class starting on Monday, March 22nd. And so we're really excited about that. And we also now have a social equity mentorship program. So if there's any organizations out there that would like to donate and sponsor a student to take our classes, we do have a link now that you can make a donation and help social equity applicants take our classes. So you can send an email at 420business@scottsdalecc.edu.
The way it real quickly works, Scottsdale Community College, this project is a one-off for META. We're involved because the licensing is coming up in Q3, et cetera. Scottsdale Community College will be teaching cannabis-related courses for years to come. Decades to come. So we're helping you guys kickstart and launch what hopefully will be a wonderful career in cannabis.
Yes.
Dr. Humble, how you doing?
Good afternoon, Dimitri. Good afternoon. Nice to see everybody again. My name is Will Humble. I've been in public health for many, many years. I was the director of the Arizona Department of Health Services when we issued all the regulations for the medical marijuana industry after Prop 203.
203.
203. I almost forgot that. So I'm going to be here with you through the end. And in particular, I'll be doing a deeper dive when the ADHS releases the rules for what they intend to see in terms of social equity, licensed applicants, et cetera.
Yep. Thank you for joining us, and we're honored by your presence and commitment to helping the state of Arizona and the people of Arizona. So let me get to Destiny Blanco. Where you at? You're behind the scenes again. Destiny runs everything at META, and she's always behind the scenes. But did we miss anything administratively?
No, you did great. Just make sure everyone signed up to the META website to stay updated to what we're doing in our projects. And April 28th, we're back. So we're all
Yeah, it's going to be a big day. It's very exciting. It's very exciting. So before I turn it over to Caleb, and you can, why don't you introduce yourself, then I'll introduce all the panelists. And then
Cool, sounds good. Hello, everyone. My name is Caleb Tice, COO of Canna Owners, a boutique consulting firm servicing clients in the cannabis industry across the country. Former license holder in Arizona, been intimately involved in the industry since its inception, and really glad to be part of the META program and helping to give back to all of those aspiring entrepreneurs and as they start their journey. So really happy to be here.
And Caleb, we really appreciate you. I think combined between the two of us, we cover a very broad swath of the cannabis industry. So, and you're more nuts and bolts on the ground, which is great. So, you know, you're perfect to help guide this conversation. Before I turn over to you, let me do my favorite part of this, which is, and one of the big benefits, of course, is the networking and the relationships and the contacts that people can make off of watching all these videos and say, yeah, I'm gonna reach out to Jim Valenzuela. He seems like a nice guy. He seems very personable. I like him. You know, he can help guide me and I can work with him. So the first portion here is the networking portion before we get into the 100,000 foot overview of the subject matter. So let me start with our module sponsor for today. And these things don't happen without module sponsors or Copper State or Weed Maps. You know, we need sponsors to keep this going, and we have great companies that understand social equity and civic involvement. So let me start by doing a quick hello and interview with Jim Perilli from Trevaro.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having us.
Would you tell us about yourself, your involvement in the cannabis space, and your company? Take a couple minutes. And then Jim will go to Siobhan.
Absolutely, Dimitri. Thank you for the time, and thank you for allowing us to sponsor on this module. Like Dimitri said, my name is Jim Perilli. I'm one of the co-owners of Trevaro. A little bit of back history of how we got started through Trevaro. My brother and I have been in staffing for a little over 5 years. We own multiple lines within the staffing business. And where we actually started in the staffing recruitment was in the manufacturing, was in the production, general labor, forklift drivers, machine operators. We started that out of the Chicagoland area from absolutely zero about 6 years ago to the point now of where we have over 4,000 contracted workers going out daily, We have 11 different locations. We're located between 5 different states, and we provide labor for manufacturing companies. A little over 250 manufacturing companies we provide daily labor with, and that's what really kind of got us started with Chivaro. When we started Chivaro about 2.5 years ago, we saw such a crossover between manufacturing and cannabis, which is one of the major reasons we got into Chivaro and started the cannabis staffing and recruitment line. Chivaro is a fully based staffing and recruitment agency for cannabis only. We focus solely on direct hire. We do not do any contract hire. We solely focus on direct hire in the cultivation, extraction, professional placement, IT, human resources. More of the upper level recruitment side is a lot that we handle on the Chivaro side. Some of the companies we work with, which we're extremely proud of, we work with Cresco Labs, PharmaCann, JuicyCo, High Life Farms, just to name a couple. So obviously we're very, very happy to be a part of this panel. And for anybody out there who is looking for assistance on the recruitment side, we've been doing this for quite a long time. We have a huge database with candidates outside of cannabis as well as in cannabis. So also any recruiters out there looking for a job, we're hiring recruiters and account representatives. So please call me. We'd love to chat with you further about it.
Wow, you sound like an incredible resource. I'm thinking to myself, if I'm receiving a social equity license and my team receives one, you're one of the first guys that I might be calling. And I'm sure every company on this call is provides the same service, which is fantastic. But wow, you've been working in the industry for a while. How long you guys been in this industry?
The cannabis industry?
Mm-hmm.
A little over 2 years. A little over 2 years.
Okay, and we know Cresco's in Arizona, as well as some of your other clients. So that's fantastic. Is there anything else that you want potential social equity applicants or members of the industry to know about you and your company?
Yeah, absolutely. We've helped a number of different social equity applicants. We work in about 16 states right now for placements within cannabis. This is something we've been doing since day one. And as you all know, Illinois just became, recreational a little over a year ago. So we helped a number of applicants in the social equity portion of that being based out of Chicago. So that's something we can definitely help you with as we have experience with that.
Yeah, we hear rumors that there might be some sort of Illinois influence over the Arizona process, but Arizona will end up doing things the Arizona way. So, we'll see what happens, but certainly that's great to know that you guys have that background and that information, which is very important. Was there a specific component of the social equity plan that was tied to human resources from the state level? Did they get into that nuanced stuff?
Yes, they did. That's something we can help a lot of the applicants out as well.
Okay. Yeah. Well, excellent. Well, Jim, we really appreciate your support of META and of this project. And, we look forward to working with you for many years to come and your success. Thank you for joining us and thank you for sponsoring again.
Absolutely, Dimitri. Thank you.
Yeah. So as we turn over to Caleb, just, jump in. Caleb likes to be interrupted. So please interrupt him when he talks. Anyone, one of the benefits of Zoom panels like this for the public is the fact that, hopefully people call each other out on their nonsense. There's a level of accountability when we're all here together as a community, which is, sad that we just threw that out for COVID, but we'll leave that alone. Siobhan from Copper State, you have a different role here today, but you have a tremendous expertise and Copper State is a fantastic organization that allows yourself and others from the organization to help and teach others. Well, tell us about yourself, your journey into the industry, and what you do for Copper State.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Dimitri. Super excited to be here. So I'm Siobhan Carragher. I'm the VP of People for Copper State, and I've been part of this organization for the past few months. I'm very excited to be partnering with an Arizona homegrown organization that's continuing to grow and thrive. I'm an Arizona native, so it was very exciting for me to partner specifically with Copper State. Prior to Copper State, I've been in HR for quite a long time, almost 20 years now. And throughout my career, I've built HR departments from scratch and helped companies in regulated industries grow and grow quickly. So it was a great entry point into cannabis when I had an opportunity with a multi-state operator to lead their HR facet about 5 years ago. So I've been in cannabis, in HR specifically, for going on 5 years. It's been amazing to watch the industry evolve, and really fun to fit all of the HR practices and principles and best practices into this ever-changing, really fun industry. So that's a little bit about me and how I got here. It's great to see Copper State continue to grow as well. So we have a very large cultivation facility in Snowflake, Arizona, as some people may know, 40 acres under glass, and we're extremely enthused that we will be adding another 40 acres for a total of 80 acres. Really, really large facility, the largest in the US. So it's a great thing to be a part of and a tremendous opportunity for people who want to enter the cannabis industry and hopefully learn best practices in all things cultivation and processing and extraction. And then, of course, we have our retail footprint as well. We have 4 dispensaries thus far, and maybe adding more there as well. So happy to help, lean in, provide any resources and tidbits that I can beyond the panel today.
Well, Siobhan, thank you. We're going to be doing a lot with Copper State hands-on as we narrow down those who want to be very actively participating in our project during the summer. So we look forward to introducing them to your team. Real quickly, you oversee the retail and the cultivation?
Yes, so our HR department is a support to the entire organization, and obviously we're vertically integrated. So we have an HR team, a small HR team that is at the farm in Snowflake, and then we have an extended team here in the Phoenix metro area. So yes, we do provide support for the entire company.
How many employees are there total now?
We are north of 600 now, around 620-ish, and adding all the time. So it's really remarkable. I think we've added upwards of 100 people just in the last few months. So it's exciting to see, particularly with adult use on board now. So.
You know, I remember Copper State when it was 2 pieces of paper and a couple guys.
I know. It's amazing. Yes.
I think we're at like 15,000 employees, somewhere close to that. Direct employees in retail and cultivation in Arizona, and it's going to grow, which is fantastic. Now, something we need to incorporate more of, Caleb, is the panelists. You know, I know not everybody's been introduced. Does anybody have any questions for Siobhan or about Copper State or about what they do before we move on to the next panelist? And feel free. You know, I had some questions about VP of people and stuff, but I don't want to. Anyone? Okay, we should remind people of that beforehand. VP of people, did that come from the cannabis industry, or is that something that existed before?
No, it existed before, and it's kind of a really cool and more meaningful way of essentially describing the HR function. So all things people. So it's the same role as a VP of HR would be. But I think that's a really, really good point. It speaks to Copper State's commitment to people. One of our most important strategic initiatives this year and in future years is to make sure that we are the employer of choice and we are considered one of the best workplaces, not only in cannabis, but just throughout our home state of Arizona. So definitely a company that's committed to values and purpose and doing right by our people. The company really does believe that without the people, without our employees at all levels, we certainly won't be able to get where we're headed, and we wouldn't be where we are today. So, so that's what the VP of people is all about.
Well, you have to excuse my ignorance of human resources. I can't remember the last time I had a job, and if I did get another job, I'd probably apply for a shepherd or something, or official Copper State court jester or something.
Yeah.
Entertain the kids in the cafeteria. Let me know if those become opening.
I will. I will keep you in mind. You'll be first on my list.
Shepherd. So thank you for your help, and please come to the April 28th gathering. We imagine it's probably gonna be like
absolutely.
8 or 12 senior execs from Copper State there. So thank you
Yes.
for joining us. That'll be fantastic.
Absolutely.
And let me move on to our next guest, Ryan from Fingerhut. How you doing? Excuse me, Ryan Fingerhut, Global Go. And Ryan, it's Fingerhut. Everybody knows Fingerhut, so I apologize for that mistake. But go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your company. You're involved in the cannabis space, and then please, everybody, while you're listening, think of a question to ask Ryan.
Sure. So I'm a little bit different from some of the panelists who've come before. My name is Ryan Fingerhut. I'm the Director of Client Services for Global Go. We're a cannabis consultancy that really specializes in regulatory compliance, licensing. Our big claim to fame is at this point now we have 173 out of 174 licenses that we've applied for, that we've won, as well as some of the business planning. And while you might be asking, what is somebody like me doing on a panel like this? One of the things that comes about, which Jim might be able to tell you from Illinois, a lot of these applications require staffing plans, staffing recruitment plans, training plans for your staff, understanding, for instance, your security and how your staff's going to be trained on your security and how the security is going to interact with your staff. As well as my personal journey into cannabis. I was actually a practicing attorney in Washington in 2014 when I-502 was passed. My biggest client was the owner of a chain of naturopathic clinics that were writing scripts for medical cannabis, asked me to come on and help with the application. I ended up leaving my practice and becoming the internal compliance officer for a grow and a manufacturing facility, and eventually for a co-op of small farms in Washington. So I actually got on the ground, hands-on experience with helping to run cannabis facilities, with dealing with staffing issues as they relate to compliance, regulatory issues, things of that nature. And Global Go, while it's probably not the majority of our business, at one point it was that we were basically standing up whole businesses, by which I mean that people would come to us with money and raw land, and then we would help them get from A to an operational business, including helping with staffing, things of that nature. I will say that a lot of my experience when it comes to staffing HR has to do with line employees and your everyday employee, rather than say your senior level executive. But we've worked on a lot of business planning where, you know, those big high dollar earning people had to be phased in as the application and as excuse me, as the company was formed and as the company became operational, and kind of helping to decide when it was that you needed to staff up and at which level along the lifespan of the company.
Wow, you are tremendous. And you're on this panel more than anything else, so that people get to know who you are, and obviously you're a tremendous resource, and so that they can reach out to you. You know, we cover, Caleb's trying to cover a big subject in an hour, so we'll get to that in a second. But people need to know who you are, and obviously you're a person that they want to contact and reach out to on this subject matter. So we really appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Excellent. Any questions from the group for Ryan?
I got one, Ryan. What were some of the things while you were on the ground? Just a quick tidbit of what you've learned that you would apply to all future projects. Like one of those things that you just was kind of an aha moment, or that I wouldn't have thought of that.
Sure. So I'd say that one of the things that was a little bit of an aha moment was I was used to doing everything from the office. And so when I became an on-the-ground compliance officer, began working things, I realized two things very quickly. One was you need a communication with your employees, but just because something makes sense on paper doesn't mean it will make sense in the real world. And so you need some type of feedback loop so that you can keep getting stronger, keep getting better, but also make sure that your employee is not just doing what's convenient, or what works best for them, but might not have another outside issue, for instance, regulatory compliance issues, which feeds into my second thing that I learned, which is that no matter what you do with employees or SOPs or anything like that, you need to create some type of accountability system so that you can actually make sure people are doing what you ask them to do.
Yep, love it. Thank you.
Ryan, I look forward to having a beer with you at a conference sometime in the summer or the fall.
Absolutely, Dimitri.
But April 28th is our big date again, so save your date. Thank you for joining us. And James, let's go on to you from HempStaff.
Thanks for having me.
Tell us about yourself, your experience in the industry, and a little bit about HempStaff.
Sure, HempStaff was formed in 2014, almost 7 years ago now. Prior to that, I was a IT recruiter for 15 years, and I saw a lot of similarities in the upcoming cannabis industry compared to the .com industry, which I recruited mostly for. So I decided to make the jump and create HempStaff. Back then, it was a lot different. Recreational was just really starting to become accepted, and there was under 20 medical states. So since then, we have seen quite a few states come on board. We have helped, hundreds, if not thousands of companies get their employees, whether it be their whole staff, just their top level employees, just their entry level employees, or just to give them some employees to show some big names on their application. So we have been around for a while to assist these newer states and newer programs. We did help quite a few companies in Illinois with their social equity, obtain social equity employees. They did it a little differently there based on a zip code, and the owner didn't necessarily have to be social equity if most of their employees were. So there was minor differences, but we have been through a social equity program establishment as well. And we do also offer training. They're just short certification classes, really to give people the knowledge to get into the industry. So we give them a quick 4-hour certification on what you should know to even apply to be in a dispensary. And we've had great success rate getting someone that doesn't really know much about the cannabis industry and help them land a job working in the industry.
This is cool. All I knew about you beforehand was that you were just a really cool looking guy with cool hair.
Oh, thanks.
And now I know all this so that I can contact you if necessary. So this is one of the most magical things about what we've been able to do with Zoom over the last year is it's like Mr. Rogers' neighborhoods. Now people know who lives in the castle, So anyway, I forgot all the names, all the Mr. Lady McClary or something.
King Friday the 13th.
There you go. So I gotta work on that one. Well, thank you, James. Any questions for James and HempStaff?
Sure, I have one. James, what would you say is one of the sort of, I don't know if I'd say personality factors, but sort of the type of attitude that somebody's getting into the cannabis industry really should have, or really makes an excellent employee?
First and foremost, compassion for cannabis. I mean, people that are passionate for cannabis almost always end up getting the job over someone who's just looking for another job. That really comes through, and most owners and managers are also compassionate about it, so they look for that in their employees. So that's definitely the number one factor, is compassion, especially for the entry level positions that don't require any previous skills or education.
It's interesting. It's so fascinating how rapidly this industry is changing and evolving. But James, it's great to see you. It's great to meet you. And, I've known your company for a long time. So thank you for joining us. And I hope people reach out to you for help and for other needs and stuff. Chelsea from Open Door was sick. She was going to join us. She'll be doing a deep dive, one of those hour-long deep dives that you'll see released in May. So sorry, Chelsea, you couldn't join us, but you've done a great job. I've known you for 7 or 8 years in this industry, and certainly you're a tremendous expert. So hope you feel better. I had COVID myself last February. So now let's, who else? Jim, of course, Jim. I don't know how much I should share about you, Jim. If everybody knew about you, they would just start inundating with phone calls. A deep story, a lot of relationships in Phoenix, and you're an important man to know. And we appreciate you and your company, Oraleaf, and your assistance with our social equity project. And so, Jim, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do want to share?
Well, thanks for having me, Dimitri, and appreciate the opportunity. I formed Oraleaf HR about a year and a half ago for the specific purpose of servicing the cannabis industry. Previous to forming Oraleaf HR, I had a company that was called DHR, that I sold to Paychex, eventually became Paychex. I sold it to them in 2017. And then I stayed on contract for 1 year and then had a 1-year non-compete. During that time frame, though, what I really was looking for was another opportunity to get into the space again, but really with a vertical that really needed the resources that we were providing, that I knew I could provide again to the space. And I really felt that the cannabis industry deserves the right and the right to have the same benefits as any Fortune 500 or small business company out there does, because you guys, we all pay the same amount of taxes, sometimes probably more. So why shouldn't you have the same access to everything that everyone else does? So that was my entry into the cannabis space, for specifically here in forming it. But I really got introduced to it in 2014, running my previous company in the Denver marketplace, because we were servicing 750 companies, 20,000 worksite employees on a monthly basis, and we had a big presence in the Denver marketplace. When they became recreational up in Denver, we had a couple of clients that suddenly grew large very quickly. My bank at the time was US Bank. They found out they were cannabis clients, so I had to be the individual that called them up and said, I can't service you any longer. That was frustrating to me. I went through the whole thing. So when I formed Oral Leaf HR, I immediately knew the key piece was getting the right bank and the right partner. So I partnered up with First Fidelity Bank here in Arizona. So I'm allowed to do everything for all the cannabis clients. I can do direct deposits. I have 401k. I do healthcare. I do workers' comp. I do everything to help the back end of a company. So I become the administrative employer on the back end and help you do all those kinds of things. Your taxes, everything, because we want to make sure that first and foremost, you're in compliance with everything. It's hard enough being in this space with all the other regulatory things that they have put on you, that let us take care of the pieces that we know best. So that way you focus on your business, let us focus on the stuff that you're really not in business to do or want to be in business to do, right? So that's kind of it. That's how I formed Oral Leaf. Been around the Valley for a number of years, and here in Phoenix, was originally from Tucson. And I know, same high school, by the way.
Yeah, we did. We went to, well, you know, I mean,
Different time. I'm a lot older. Okay, fine. You'll have me say it.
Well, you know, I like to say I graduated high school in the 90s.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Yeah, but I barely did by year.
So anyway, but yeah, so I've been around, done a lot of entrepreneurial deals, trained as a CPA out of school. And so that's my background. I've done a lot of real estate, other entrepreneurial deals, real estate, software, medical software, but then I got into HR about 12 years ago.
And it's Jim Valenzuela.
Yes.
Yeah. So, you know, if people are going to watch this over the next few months, and if they're fortunate enough to get in touch with you, you have, I know your resources run deep. Guys like you and Raul Molina are movers and shakers throughout Arizona, way beyond the cannabis space. And so we really appreciate you helping us out, and we really appreciate you supporting this project. And so thank you very much. Any other questions for Raul? I mean, not Raul, but Jim, sorry, I just said Raul Molina. Jim Valenzuela from Oral Leaf. All
Jim,
right.
I got a quick question for you on, well, because you had a previous payroll company and then sold it and then got back into it. So besides banking, what would be like one challenge that you had to overcome of it being the different industry versus what you were doing before?
401k, finding a custodian and record keeper that'll take it, because I'm very transparent. I want everyone to know that I'm doing cannabis employees, because I don't want that to be moved again. The same thing when I went to United Healthcare to get a master plan with United Healthcare. They know me, so they said, okay, we'll do it with you. Same thing with everyone. I'm very transparent. I want them to know that I am attacking the cannabis space. I'm not hiding it from anyone. That's the same why I went to First Fidelity Bank. So that's what allows me to do everything.
Well, and there, I mean, it's just this, I think by, you know, in 3 years, we're probably, with all the manufacturing and cultivation licenses that are available, the dispensaries won't grow too much beyond what they grow within the first 6 months here. But the manufacturing and cultivation opportunities, I think we'll probably reach some 25,000, 30,000 employees. I don't know how those things grow necessarily, but I mean, we had zero employees in August 2012, and now there's 15,000 cannabis employees. There's lots of opportunities. So Jim, we look forward to your success, and we look forward to your participation on this panel.
Look forward to it.
Just real quickly, did I miss anyone? With all these, I love this gallery view with all these advertisements and stuff. I think, sorry, I'm just in
all
this.
covered. You got it all covered, Dimitri.
All right, well, so let me go ahead and turn it over to Caleb, our subject matter expert and our host for the next part. And please, panelists, you know, if Caleb says something wrong, jump in and say, whoa, Caleb, this is, you know, correction.
Hey, I'm never wrong.
and when other panelists speak, you know, cross over each other. We encourage that kind of interaction. That's one of the great assets of the benefits of Zoom. So Caleb, take it away.
All right. Thank you, Dimitri. And thank you again, panelists, everyone, for being here. We got a lot of different perspectives, different journeys, and different aspects of HR, which HR is an aspect of business. You have your people and you're going to have to manage your people. It's an aspect of every business that is on earth. And cannabis has its unique nuances that we've touched on, and we're going to dive into and get some more detail on. So I appreciate, thanks again to all the panelists for being here. And I'm looking forward to learning more about you and your companies too. So just to bring everybody up to speed, let me go ahead and, my mouse just died. There we go. Oop. And thank you. I'm working out of a, here we go. Just start. There we go. Okay. All right. I'm traveling this week, so I'm working out of a ad hoc office. So bear with me today. So just to bring everybody up to speed on where we're at in the sequence, there are 16 total modules that we are putting on. Last week we discussed extraction. We've kind of been walking through all the different steps of opening your business. So now we are to HR. So on this panel today, you're going to learn the steps to developing your staffing plan, the hiring process for C-suite, accounting, management, budtenders, grow personnel, and how all of those positions, how it differs and how it's going to determine your success. Because certainly the process is not the same for every position as well as every level. And then lastly, we're going to talk about the importance of an employee handbook and what are some of those high level things that have to be included. We could spend the entire time today talking about a handbook. So we'll just touch on some of those high level things that have to be included. So our agenda today is we're going to go ahead and cover what a staffing plan is, as I mentioned, org charts, handbook, recruiting, so locating and retaining talent, managing cannabis payroll and some of the uniqueness there. I know we touched on it a bit. We're going to dive in. So let's go ahead and get started. All right. So you hear the word staffing plan. Sharon, what does that mean to you? You have experience in the cannabis industry and also before, and of organizations of various sizes. So when somebody comes and says, what's a staffing plan? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, great question. I really see the staffing plan kind of as a guidepost for people operations, headcount management, that true balance between budget, operating profitably, being mindful of the number of people it takes to fulfill SOPs effectively, to drive efficiencies and productivity. And I also, what resonates with me is it really is about a partnership between HR and the department or department manager or leader, to understand also what those trigger points are that might require scaling the staffing plan. There's some finessing to it. It's definitely important to account for the lead time from a job post through the hiring cycle. getting people trained and well equipped to do their jobs well from day one. And then of course you layer in there our facility agent or dispensary agent card processing and those timelines. So it truly is a partnership. There's many facets to it. And again, depending on the type of business line, it can look, vastly different from a dispensary environment versus, a large cultivation facility. So it's asking questions and having a close relationship between the department head and HR for sure.
So a couple key things I heard there, budgeting, asking the right questions, knowing that it's a process and that there's going to be a lot of different variables that factor in. So those were things that really jumped out at me.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, James, you want to take that same question? So a new client comes to you and says, I need a staffing plan. What do I do?
Yeah, I mean, there's many different ways you can go about that, but she was very correct in her correlation between staffing and budget. You got to know who to hire when, who to hire first. And most people, we would recommend you hire your managers and hire from the top down. You don't want to have a manager hired later and then not like the people working under him, and then he's going to just have turnover, whether he creates it or the people under him don't get along with him. So we always recommend a top-down hiring. Then there's many different ways you can do that. You can use a company like Hempstaff to do all the hiring, or you can just use up to find the top people. Sometimes we even, are used to hire consultants to kind of get people into position they need to be. And then they don't really need anyone full-time for still a few more months if they're waiting on inspections or even the application. So really, a lot of it depends on what stage they are in, whether it's application, licensing, or an actual, company that has a building and everything built already.
Yep, I think you hit on it. The first point that I had on here, which is you got to assess your needs. You got to figure out what you really need and where you're at. And I think you really hit on something, which is culture. So that's their company culture is unique to every company, and it's the people that make up that business. Ryan, what are some of the different cultures? I know that you've had some on the ground experience, and then certainly you interact with a lot of different groups that you're consulting. So what are some of the things on culture and how that ties into kind of assessing needs?
Sure. So yeah, I definitely say that culture, your company culture is almost your number one, or at least your number two consideration when you're vetting an employee, because if he or she does not get along with everybody else in your company, you're going to have all sorts of personal conflicts. In fact, it's one thing to be a personal contributor. It's a very different thing to be a manager, both with your ability to deal with interpersonal conflict below you, as well as interpersonal conflict above you or laterally. But I would say that I've seen a lot of different types of culture, especially as the cannabis environment has evolved. Also in different departments, sometimes you'll have a slightly different culture. For instance, your budtenders who are interacting with your customer who comes in the door, that's a different type of culture than, say, your compliance team, who really have to be detail oriented and can't really budge or josh too much on certain things, although they also have their own issues because they have to be able to balance what they're doing against operational needs and profitability to make sure that you guys are staying compliant, but in such a way that meets all of the needs. But I would say that how corporate, how buttoned down you're looking for a culture to be is definitely one of your first considerations. You're looking to be a little bit more approachable, a little bit easier. Obviously it's cannabis industry, highly regulated. You don't want to risk your license or your business. But there's a couple of different ways to go about that. And so normally I kind of take a look at how the person's interacting. I give them a couple of issues, for instance, when I'm interviewing an employee, to see not really if they come up with the right solution, but how they reason out that solution. Do they reach out to other people as a resource? Do they try to take care of it internally and not bother other people? And just really consider, one, what is the corporate culture that you are trying to create? But secondly, what is the internal corporate culture that you need for each of your departments and that this person is going to be sitting in?
Wow. That's
Yep,
a good
I love
answer.
it.
I'd hire you.
Jim, Valenzuela, I wanted to hear, so when you have new clients come in, do they already have a staffing plan? Is that something that you help to assist when they're coming to get set up for payroll or
Usually-
various services?
Yeah, usually they already are set up, but we could help them if they wanted to, as far as how we set it up in the systems and everything. But generally, they do come in with their own staffing plan. But we then help them depending on the status of where they are and how young they are or how mature they are, what the needs are. We always look at it and say, hey, do you need us to do other things, whether it's on the HR side or other things like that? Well, that's what we're there to help, to make sure that their systems then run correctly. But like you said earlier, I've been involved in other businesses before too. Your staffing plan is critical. It's got to be, you got to have the HR folks mirror up with the finance folks, that mirror up with the departments and every one of these things. Because at the end of the day, your metrics and your bottom dollars and everything else comes to fruition at the end of the day. And it all leads to the one thing that everyone wants to get to is you got to get to a profitable entity, but you got to do it. And the department heads, and you got to work with those department heads to make sure they get the right resources. Like Swan said, it's getting the correct amount of resources that then becomes scalable, right? Because you have to have a scalable product and a scalable team to make it really very, very successful.
Yep, and it comes back to assessing your needs and where you're at that time, and really mapping to your operations and where you want to take it. So staffing is a key component, but you really need to know, what is your business doing and where am I trying to take this? And what
you got to know your financial resources, right? What do you have?
Yep, budget is number one. Yeah,
there you go.
It's always whether or not we got the dollars. Can't tell you how many conversations I've had about that, of going to owners of, well, I need to hire somebody else. Well, can we afford it? That's always the first question. And then we go into the need and develop it from there. But ultimately, you got to be able to afford it. So
correct.
All right. Thank you very much. Does anybody else have anything on staffing plan that they wanted to touch on? What about you, Dimitri? When's the last time you developed a staffing plan?
It's never been done. In the shepherd world, there's not a lot of planning. We just make sure we chase the goats, follow the goats. When the goats get stuck in the weeds, we have the machete to break them out. But this complexity is important because I'm learning here as well. I need to know this stuff.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. So we'll go ahead and continue on with that, because what we basically have covered here is we've seen, all right, so that there's a lot of different pieces of the plan. Ultimately, you got to figure out, what does my operations look like? What am I trying to do? And that comes as the next step, which is your organizational chart and your job descriptions. So those are terms that you hear thrown around in business a lot: org chart, JDs for short. Siobhan, what is an org? You have a lot of different departments on your org chart. Talk to us a little bit about the development, how it's changed, and kind of just an example of some structure, some different departments of how you've organized.
Sure, absolutely. So they're definitely and very obviously distinct from one business unit to the next. Our org chart at the farm is very, very extensive. it'd take an entire wall of 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper taped up to really capture it. But of course we have, that top leader, that VP leader, and then everyone kind of cascades down from there. I would say the biggest distinction, in a large scale like cultivation or manufacturing facet in a cannabis company is you typically are going to have more layering in of leads and supervisors. You will have certainly a department manager, but he or she may have 100 people in their department. So it's really about making sure the support and the resources and someone to tether back to for all things accountability and supervision and training and process improvement, that those frontline employees who are so critical and for business continuity and consistency and striving for excellence, that people really do have someone that they can tether back to. So we have kind of that mirrored across our cultivation. We have a large inventory and packaging and processing team there, of course. We have an extraction lab. We have an industrial kitchen. So it became really, really important for us, especially as we have leaders from other parts of the organization going and spending time with those teams, to have a place where we can update org charts ongoing and pull them up in real time. It is a challenge to find such a resource in an HRIS oftentimes, particularly ones that are still evolving in our cannabis industry. So we've had to be creative and find kind of outsourced software systems where we can upload sort of census information and it will deliver on the fly org charts. So that's been really, really key for us. The point in that, and why we've made sure to have that type of a tool, is I really see the org chart as a key piece of communication. And we talked earlier about accountability. It's an accountability and clarity providing structure, right? So people can see visually who to go to for what, and especially understand the linkage across the company. So we can see from the farm through the wholesale sales facet and into dispensary, how does it all operate together? And it helps team members understand that we're not operating in a silo. We really all do rely on one another. So I think more than anything, especially in a vertically integrated environment, it's a super critical communication piece for sure.
I 100% agree with you. That clarity and understanding communication, and who do I go to when I have a question, or who do I report to? Who ultimately am I being held accountable to? And what are the expectations? How do I know who to go and ask what my expectations are? So really developing that, I think you really, really hit on that.
I just developed Mita's org chart while she was doing that.
There we go.
I'm on it.
James, I'd love to hear, so you have a client that's coming and they're trying to figure out and develop their org chart, and ultimately it's you got to have a couple of different partners getting started, and they're trying to figure out who's going to do what and who's going to report to who. So how talk to us through like how you would help kind of guide that conversation, and what sort of questions would you ask to help to get to where you need to go?
Sure. Every place may differ a little in their organization chart. Some people, like for instance, in a cultivation center, won't just have one director of cultivation. They may have two to share duties, so someone's there at all hours of the day, kind of. So you really got to find out what their idea of the org chart is first. You can't really push it on a client. They usually have an idea. So it's from our side as a recruiter, it's kind of getting out of the client what their idea of their company is going to look like, and then giving them suggestions from what we have seen in the past. So no two are going to be identical at all. Everybody has a little idea of how they want their company to run. So it's really getting a lot of input from the client on our side.
So what are some of the questions that you would ask them if somebody's like, well, I know I want to be involved in the business, but I'm not sure on what aspect of, maybe I want to be overseeing the finance side, or maybe I want to be more operations. So like
from a candidate side, you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, from a candidate side, we always tell the candidates, what do you do now? You know, and then we go into, okay, well, this is what you do now. This is the kind of jobs that relate to that in the cannabis industry. So if they are in a compliance type job, they really need to brush up on their cannabis compliance, unless possibly they, you know, have a legal degree, then they can, you know, you are pretty sure that they can address the compliance issues pretty quickly if they have a legal degree. Otherwise, it may not be for them. So that may be not quite a good example. Accounting, another one. While it's good to have the accounting experience, unless you really know the nuances of all the cannabis accounting, going to be difficult. Marketing and sales, though, pretty similar. If you know how to market and sales and you're a cannabis enthusiast, you're probably going to do pretty well at marketing and sales. So once again, that pretty much is siloed depending on what their skill is and, you know, what they're looking to do in the industry. Some skills don't translate. If you're making $80,000 a year as an IT guy and want to go into cannabis industry, it's probably not going to happen, unfortunately. Those jobs are very far and few between to make that amount as an IT guy in the cannabis industry.
Got it. And ultimately, I think you hit on it. You have to have the passion. If you're just chasing the money, this isn't the industry for you.
Absolutely.
Because it changes constantly and you're solving problems. And it's, if you like the type of job where every day is exactly the same, this is not the industry for you.
Yeah, these aren't head shops they're working in. Exactly.
Very quickly. So Dr. Humble, I'd actually love to get your perspective on job descriptions. I know with the rules development, that was very important for the department to know who was doing what, who had what authority. So if you could talk to us a little bit kind of about that background and the development of those regulations.
Yeah, so and thanks for the opportunity. So when we developed those rules, we were really looking at it through the lens of a regulator, which is different from what you're talking about here, is how do you make something actually work? Our job was, how do we identify that this business is actually following the policies and procedures, the regulations? How is it that when our surveyors come in, that they're going to be able to hit on the key elements and that they have this kind of structural integrity, that, you know, the background check part of all of the things that we required for agents and so forth was all part of the statute. So that wasn't something that we had discretion on. We did charge too much for the fees, and I apologize for that. Those just agent fees cards that went $500, are they still $500? That was way too high. Just like the patient cards were too high.
They are, but at least it's 2 years now, so that's a little bit better. But yeah,
but still, it was way too high. And that's a mea culpa on my part. Do a mea culpa whenever I have a chance on that. And so, yeah, we, you know, we put those criteria in from the perspective of a regulator to be able to identify, you know, when things are working. I will say, and this might be a question for Dimitri or both of you, is there a module on how to select your business partners and your board of directors? Because as a regulator, what we saw was when there was drama with the board of directors, we had a non-compliant facility. And so selecting your business partners is, I mean, that's personnel too. It's, you know, be careful about who you go into business with. Just because they have money isn't a good enough reason to get into business with them. You've got to make sure that you get along with them personally and professionally, and that you understand what makes them tick. We've talked about emotional intelligence on a few of these webinars. Make sure that you understand who you're getting into business with at that top investor board of directors level, because it all starts right there. And I'm just telling you, when we saw dispensaries go bad, a lot of times you would see drama at the board level.
Yeah, really? Everybody knows my story one-on-one. So, but just really, again, any ideas always, this is doesn't need to be so formal. The art of selecting your business partners. I'm going to send that out. We have like 150 panelists who are also, you know, registered as social equity mentors. Their emails are available online, but I think that's a great module that we can add to our deep dive series. And I invite individuals that want to be part of that panel to contact me, because I'm going to moderate that one, and I might speak up a little bit more. So.
Well, yes, we definitely touched on it on assembling your team. And I think we really hit on it when we're talking about culture, in that the culture starts from the partners, from ownership. And if you don't have accountability and you see that the owners will say one thing, but they'll do another, they're not following the rules in the same way. I mean, I think about when I was running a shop, I would go to the other side of the counter to do my patient sales, to show all of my staff that that's what they had to do. So it starts with leadership and demonstrating that this is the accountability, and that's how you're going to set your culture. So it comes from the leaders. I'm not surprised to hear that, Dr. Humboldt. that there was a direct correlation between bad leadership or mismanagement and operational issues, for sure.
Mismanagement and non-compliance. You know, that's mismanagement, bad drama within the board ends up with non-compliance because they're spending all their time and effort on the drama instead of making things work the way they're supposed to work. Hey guys, I got to go. I got to jump off a little bit early this time, but I'll be back next week at 3 o'clock.
Yeah, thank you. We'll see you next week, Dr. Hubble. Caleb, if I may take the thing in a little different direction here real quickly.
Yeah, go for it.
Because this is something, you know, having, I was in the room, we had all the people who won the licenses, August 8, 2012. And I've watched them all hire people, hire 1, hire 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 600 at Copper State, my Lord. At what point do people need professional help? You know, I could have used professional help when I picked my business partner, as Dr. Hubble pointed out. But you know, I'm not an expert on this subject, but at what point do you need like a human resource manager to take over your hiring? You know, that seems like a very important question. Anyone, Jim?
Yeah, you know, I think it all depends, Dimitri, and I've seen it from other industries, but in this industry, I think it's to get the professional help. I think the first thing, like you were saying, that would help, that would be interesting to me would be surround yourself with a good team of professionals initially, right? You've got your attorneys, you got your accountants, you got all those folks that are there. And then, I mean, the first hires, you've got to be involved with those hires. It is you, right? It has to be you because you are the company at that point in time. You are it is your asset. So it needs to permeate through you and the leadership of that. And then as you get larger and depending upon the scalability and how fast it's growing, that's going to determine a lot of when you really need a full-time HR person, right? Internally, that's still doing the hiring. But I will tell you this, the culture that comes down and it is pushed down into that HR department has to still have the culture that the ownership wants of that company, because it has to continue on. It's a living, breathing the item that goes on with the company. It just has to. Otherwise, what Saban said earlier was you end up with siloed entities and departments, and that really is detrimental to any organization.
Anybody else? So same question. You know, I mean, these people are these groups are gonna find themselves on day one. You know, what do I do next?
From our perspective, it really comes down to when the owner no longer has time to efficiently vet or go through the resumes. That's people that come to us a lot of time, they don't realize how many resumes they're going to get when they post a job. And if they have a lot of other stuff they're doing in the day, it just overwhelms them. At that point, it's probably time to use a service or go to an HR manager, because you don't want to be rushed in your first hires. Like you said, those are most important. Those first hires can make or break your business, really. So you really got to be dedicated to those and at least hire the people that are then going to hire the rest of your people. So if you hire someone you trust, then you can trust them to hire the rest of your people, because you know the culture is going to remain the same.
Ryan or Siobhan?
Yeah, I could not agree more. I think it all is about making sure that the people you're hiring in every seat, of course, but especially those key seats, is a person who really emulates your vision, your mission, your values, why you exist. That purpose-driven stuff is really what engages the hearts and minds of those employees who are either taking care of and growing our plants or manufacturing our products or interfacing with patients and customers. So that is super critical. I also think even when you have a fully developed HR team, it's important that HR team, even if you have an in-house recruiter, that there is a really good partnership with recruiting and staffing firms. This has been really critical for me in the cannabis industry. And you have to have that partnership and know when you need to lean on someone to help you, particularly fill roles that might be more executive level. So you have someone with 1,000 things going on, which there will always be in our industry, someone who can really fully focus on finding that critical hire for you while understanding kind of the organizational DNA and what your company stands for. The partnership in terms of you knowing that kind of like third-party recruiter, headhunter, staffing firm knows what you're looking for and can kind of be that stand-in for you. I've also found that the partnership is really important if you're working for a company that's doing acquisitions, or perhaps you're trying to open and operate more than one license at a time, particularly if you're an MSO, having, again, that help and that support to staff quickly but effectively is critical. Even when you have my point is, even when you have a well-developed HR team and an excellent recruiting team, you still need to have those kind of external resources as and when needed.
Yeah, I agree with everything that everybody here has been saying. If I could just offer a little bit of extra, in my opinion, the owners or the core management team should do a couple of the initial hires, the important people. I think that when I look at a senior person for recruiting, well, aside from obviously, really, I look at two types of trust that I have to have in that person in order to give them a management role in my company or my client's company. The first is trust that they're, kind of the bad partner and all of that, that they're going to tell the truth. They're going to be honest. They're going to be people of integrity. The second is most people don't think of it when they think of trust, but competency. I need to trust that not only is this person going to do their best, but that they're capable of doing a good enough job that they're not going to inadvertently get me into a lot of trouble. And from there, whether that's an internal person or that's a staffing agency that you feel, basically has a competence to help you staff and it's going to do a good job of it, this kind of ties back into what we were talking about with our employee plan or staffing plan. You have to scale. And one of the very, very common mistakes I see in the new cannabis entrepreneur is they don't take into account opportunity cost. If they're spending all of their time on staffing, there's a whole bunch of other things that's not getting done. So you need to kind of have in your staffing plan, okay, I'm going to get up to these certain roles who I'm going to be hiring, and then this person has to take over, and then we'll have the department heads, to Joan's point, who will staff under themselves because you don't necessarily want a manager who doesn't get along with any of his employees. And you just really need to kind of be strategic about how you're going to do it, and you can't undervalue your own time.
Where were you guys when I joined this industry? I've helped a lot of people between 2012, 13, 14, et cetera. And a lot of people are like, can I hire my friend? I've helped hundreds and hundreds of people get jobs, and none of them seem to have been based on like rational, logical decision-making process like you guys all have. So, maybe it was just the maturation of the industry, but this is good stuff because the people who'll be watching this will be one step ahead because there's experts that can help them. So thank you for doing this. Sorry, Caleb, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, you're good. I can give a great example of that. My first 3 hires, I hired my third one literally about 15 minutes after my ATO inspection because I needed another body to be working with us on Monday. I mean, that was the mindset that I had. This was 2012, 2013, and I had a lot to learn. And I learned very quickly about the people that you can get in, that you can get along with. I mean, I was lucky. I was fortunate. That hire actually ended up replacing me when I moved along a couple of years later. So he stuck with the company. It was a great hire. He knows who he is. But we had to move really, really fast, and we did because we thought that's what we had to do. And I certainly have learned that you want to hire slow and fire fast, not the opposite. So that's a good little adage that I'll give all of you guys. So no, that's great. That's great. So yeah, I want to turn on next to, I'm going to go ahead and bring this up, and I'll leave it up for just a minute just to kind of digest a bit. There's a lot of information that's on here, and it's vitally important is tying into the communication, and that everyone who works at your company understands what your company stands for and what are the nuts and bolts of what do I have to abide by. So there's going to be certain things that are going to be unique to your company, but this gives a good overview. So I'm leaving up here just a minute. You can pause the video on the recording, look back. There's a lot of great resources, both with all of our panelists here to help with that development, especially if you've never heard of an employee handbook or never been given one. I've been at places where I asked for it and it was a chuckle. It was the response. So,
you know, Caleb, along those lines, like employee handbook, and the panelists would know better than I, how many of these things are there unique cannabis aspects to that have to be altered from, you know, the traditional employee handbooks, you know, traditional, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Does anybody want to jump in? I know a couple just offhand.
Yeah,
Safety
what
and
makes
security
cannabis
first, certainly.
What makes cannabis so unique? I think a lot of people will be asking themselves, well, hell, I ran an auto dealership. I had a human resources team. I had handbooks, all this kind of stuff. I can handle this. But what makes cannabis unique? What are the points that make cannabis unique in that space? Is that you see where I'm going with that?
Yeah, I see what you're going with that. It's
Ryan,
the nature of the product. It's the transition from black market to regulated market. It's the what is acceptable, what has been acceptable before. You're going to get a lot of patients, a lot of customers that think that they can come in and it's like, oh, well, here, no, let me give you five, like what kind of freedom and flexibility versus these are our internal company policies and stuff that we have to follow. So you get a lot of people trying to make deals. The safety and security aspect, it's a lot of cash. You have two kinds of cash. You have inventory and you have your actual cash. Something like so you have to design and put in checks and balances as part of in what the expectation of the employees. I mean, most jobs outside of working in banks of where you're going to be on camera and you're going to be watched every second from when you walk in until you leave. As well as having to check in money, check in product. Your onboarding is typically going to be more involved because of the compliance aspect. And it changes every single day. So having to constantly be up to speed on that is really the big difference as I see.
And I'd like to hear from Jim and Ryan and all these guys. Ryan keeps shaking his head. I mean, what is the unique aspects of that? And I think it's an important question of, you know, that cannabis brings to human resources that people should say, well, that's new. I didn't know that. You follow me here? I'm sorry.
No, of course. So look, everything that's unique about the cannabis industry, for the most part, I'm being kind of high level general here, but kind of comes from the fact that there's federal conflict of laws right now with cannabis. It's federally illegal. Because of that, the states that do allow for cannabis, it's a highly regulated industry. As we saw in Arizona and California before they really began regulating it, the federal government was coming in and raiding people. They've stopped because Arizona and California are regulating this industry. So everything has to kind of be around those regulations. That's what protects us from, you know, the Jeff Sessions of the world, even though he's no longer in office, coming in and kicking down our door. And so everything you do with employees, how you train employees, the way that you plan out their workflows, the type of employee you choose, you know, you need to make sure that this is the type of employee who's going to be able to function and function successfully in a highly regulated environment. Beyond that, there's a few other issues that kind of flow from that. For instance, you know, if cash was mentioned, your employees are going to be around a lot of cash and whatnot because a lot of banks won't do business with cannabis industries. You know, merchant accounts are very, very difficult to come across. So you're going to be dealing with a lot of cash, a lot of fungible things. It's a high secure industry, not only because of the compliance, but because that federal illegality, means we have a lot of cash on hand and criminals know this, or B, criminals will sometimes target us because of the fact that we have cannabis, which if say you drive it to cannabis, you can get 3 times as much as you can in the state of Arizona, or something like that. So it definitely impacts it. And I think that the thing that really impacts it is the fact that everything you or your employees do has to go through the prism of compliance with the regulations before it can do anything else.
You want, Jim Valenzuela, did you want to chime in there, or Siobhan?
I'll chime in real quick. You know, I think you're right. I think from a standpoint, it's a highly regulated environment. And there's a lot of stuff that crosses over, but you do have the fact that, you know, the compliance features when an employee comes on board first, they got to go through all the things first to become an employee, right? You got the background checks, you got all these pieces of it, that piece of it. But then when you get them on board, it is correct. You got all the internal processes they've got to follow, right? Because that sets the expectations, the culture, sets everything, and the job responsibilities, and that helps you. And as you go down the line, that is actually the processes you need to actually grow. And you're going to be potentially having to use those later on with that employee handbook, because we all know that sooner or later, something's going to happen with that employee or some employee, and you're going to need that to protect you, the employer. The employer, that is, the employer needs to be protected as much. So that employee handbook is a protection, not only for you, but the employee also in a lot of ways. But on the other part is, as you grow into other states, you know, every state has different HR rules. In California is completely different than Arizona. So that's when we know, I know from our standpoint that we need to know, we are in every one of these states, right? We used to be in 45, 46 different states. We had to keep up to speed with all those states. So every state has different little things that, you know, how fast you have to pay someone that's terminated. You know, the sick leaves, the pay, the PTO, all these things on a daily basis, they seem to change in today's marketplace. So you got to know all those pieces of it. But here in Arizona, you know, it's a little less stringent, but still you have, you know, you got medical leave acts, you got all these things that are going on, and it depends on the size of your company that changes your human resource needs. And so those are the things that come up, and, you know, you just want to make sure that you're prepared for them at all times.
Siobhan, did you want to talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with everything everyone said. The other thing that resonates with me, and we've probably all been there, and this might not be the best thing to admit as an HR leader, because I do know all our policies in our handbook and all the handbooks I've ever been involved in. But let's face it, I think the majority of employees do not read and go through line by line, and don't have a really robust understanding of that handbook. Oftentimes they are, yep, here's the handbook, let me sign the acknowledgement page and move on. So for checking the box from a compliance perspective, both like employment law and HR compliance, yes, and then regulatory compliance in cannabis, yes, really important to have those acknowledgements and to have the tangible document. But what I think is important to remember is that it's not just having employees hopefully read, which they probably don't, but sign off on the acknowledgement page date of hire, but it is taking it a step further and breaking apart that handbook and all of the compliance aspects that are so critical to driving our business forward, breaking it down in bite-sized bites and doing ongoing trainings, having lunch and learns, talking about key policies and procedures, especially when we see that things are going off the rails or there's been training deficiencies, or we might have an increased number of a certain type of employee relations issues. It's making sure that we're talking about all of those pieces ongoing and breaking it down and not just relying only on the handbook to get the job done. And then it's, of course, making sure that you do all of these things like participate on, HR blogs, and all of, employment law firms have really, really great ongoing email alerts about the changing landscape, both in cannabis and in the HR world and employment law world. So things are always a moving target, making sure you're also updating the handbook at least every year and hopefully talking about it and taking some of the dread out of it for your employees and layering it in with good stuff that they actually, that they perceive really kind of helps them, like total rewards and PTO and paid sick leave and all of these benefit things layered in there as well. So that's just my 2 cents to make sure we're talking about it.
James, on the same subject, what makes cannabis, and maybe also you can expand. I mean, I don't know what where you were before, or Jim from Trevaro, or Jim Valenzuela, you know, maybe some experiences that you've had that say, well, that's not how that happened back at the auto dealership, and this is really unique here in cannabis.
Yeah, it seems like cannabis is taking a page from the .com industry I have seen, especially like lunch and learns. That was really big in the IT industry. For those who don't know what that is, basically the company buys lunch, throws everyone in a conference room, and does a presentation of some sort. So those are pretty big to keep up, the update, and because people don't read those employee handbooks. She's absolutely right. A lot of times they'll do a video instead of a handbook because people are more apt to at least absorb some of it watching a video rather than being trusted to read the handbook. So there's definitely pages it seems like they've taken from the IT and .com industry to get people a little more involved in the SOPs. As recruiters, we don't generally write any SOP or handbooks. We find the people who have experience writing the SOPs and handbooks and give them to the clients. So I don't really have any personal experience in the cannabis industry with looking at a handbook. I just know of all these different techniques which seem to be carried over from the IT industry.
Any other good, tell us a story, Siobhan. Any other good, like, wow, because you said 20 years experience in the space?
Almost, not quite, but close to it. More than 15.
So tell us a cannabis unique story that you're like, well, that wouldn't have happened at the auto dealership.
Oh gosh, there's so many.
Well, if you want to,
There's so many. I think one of the most interesting ones was figuring out how to, it wasn't in Arizona, it was another state that was requiring there be a drug-free workplace policy in the employee handbook, which is not, it's not typical in a lot of industries. It's very typical for, federal or municipal contractors and entities, but not always the case for private industry. So it was a very interesting way of having to figure out how to meet that regulatory criteria while also understanding that a lot of our employees for medicinal or well-being reasons were avid cannabis users. So having to sort of retrofit and adapt and communicate it in a way that our employees could understand and speak to it was really interesting. So there's been lots of interesting employee relations types of things that I've dealt with over the years that I've been thankful to be able to tether back to that handbook. So it's definitely important to have those policies, but also to make them real world for your workforce and for your employees.
Jim, did you want to jump in there on the same subject?
No, all the experience I have was in other companies outside of the cannabis, and some of them were really crazy, by the way.
Well, but we have time. We can tell the story you want to.
You can only I won't even go there. There's a lot of industries that we used to service, and you had restaurants, you had massage envies, you had everything. So you can imagine the gamut of things that we used to get barrages and the help we used to have to go out there, and we used to fly out to some of the locations to help the clients mitigate the issues that they were having.
I can imagine the issues that might occur at massage.
Yeah. So we saw a lot of issues.
Anyone? I think we got everybody on that question. Caleb, go ahead. Next question. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt there.
You're good, man. You're good. It's a flow and a work in process. Excuse me. All right. Well, I want to jump into the next topic here.
Did we lose Jim from Trevaro, or are you still? I'm waiting for him to reappear so I can call on him. But
I think he dropped off actually.
Okay, good. That's
so, which let me escape. I need to share my screen first and then do that. I usually have 3 screens, so it works a little bit better. So, okay. All right. So we've talked a lot about developing a staffing plan. You've developed your employee handbook. This is basically how I want to manage my employees. Here's the things I want them to know. Here's how I'm going to pay them. Here's how I'm going to evaluate them. That was one thing we didn't touch on too much, but performance evaluations and having a defined structure for this is how I'm going to find out and get feedback on how I'm doing in my job and how can I get better. That was the one thing I heard the most from all of my staff, that was one thing that we made sure to develop that from the very beginning, and it made a big difference. I mean, knowing that there was an opportunity to voice their concerns, feedback, and part of that feedback loop that Siobhan was talking about at the very beginning of our session today, that's very, very important to have. So as you can see in the slide on the screen, we're talking about locating and retaining talent. So that's really been the name of the game here. But certainly recently, companies have been challenged to include more diversity across their organizations. So I want to open it up to the panel of what are some of the things that that you're seeing and have evolved in order to help to promote diversity within the organizations you're working with.
How does that the rubber meet the what is it? The rubber meets the road on that? How does that? James, do you want to take that one? I saw you shaking your head.
Sure. I mean, it really depends on the client. Obviously, some companies are definitely more, geared towards getting diverse candidates in there and are willing to do what it takes. And other clients are not. It does pose a little bit of a problem when it gets down to a race issue, being an equal opportunity employer as a recruitment and stuff. You can't really tell people what their race is when you give them a resume or whatever. So we did like the way Illinois did the social equity, which is based on your zip code, because that's easy to obtain and is not under any type of legal obligation that you can't reveal that to someone. So it is a little bit tricky, depending on the state's laws of social equity. And we definitely would hope to see more people, more states be more transparent in how they're doing the social equity, because Illinois was a big issue with the diversity, because they allowed their owners to not be social equity applicants as long as they had the majority of their staff be social applicants. So they had a lot of owners that were not what they intended when the law was passed that got licenses. And as you saw in Illinois, that caused quite a bit of issue with the delaying of licenses and then the issuing of more licenses to kind of correct their faux pas they did.
Fascinating. Ryan, did you want to take that one? You're on mute. Ryan, you're on mute.
Oh, I'm sorry. Would you repeat the question? I was actually answering one of the questions on the chat. So,
well, Siobhan, Jim, did you want to jump in there? I don't want to put you on the spot there, Ryan.
No worries.
Yeah, diversity must
Sure.
be. Yeah. How does that? How do
Yeah.
you wrestle with that issue as an organization?
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's critical. And I think, one organization that comes to mind that I really believe in, that I'm sure we're all familiar with, is Last Prisoner Project. And that's all about diversity, equity, social accountability. So I think it's a natural fit in our industry. I think that beyond the diversity element, it is also about equity and inclusion. And it's about an organization being committed to do better. We have plenty of progress to make as a country, certainly as an industry, but it just starts with that mindfulness and that commitment and the awareness, particularly with our managers and leaders. So some of the things that I've done or been involved in over the years are, a task force, like a diversity, equity, inclusion task force. And it's an ongoing, monthly exploration of how are we doing? Let's look at our metrics. Let's look at our demographics. Let's particularly look at how we're mentoring and succession planning people through the organization and promoting and giving people opportunities to represent. Let's make sure our leadership team and our board is representative and that we're paying attention to DE&I. Let's look at our compensation, right? Let's look across all departments and let's make sure that we are consistent in how we're paying people from a male-female perspective, from an ethnicity perspective. So it's just the awareness piece, I can't stress enough how important that is. And then there's a really great local organization that's called the Diversity Leadership Alliance. They have some really great right now webinars, but soon enough, hopefully monthly forums, and then an annual conference. So they send out really, really great resources. They have very interesting topics. It's a great way to send managers and leaders and even frontline employees to participate, and it's right here local. So it's about just, it's about the awareness and the commitment to do better more than anything else, and having some sort of an expressed commitment inside your organization as it relates to DE&I to me. And that task force to hold you accountable and get feedback from people representing the whole organization can really be transformative as well.
Well, I mean, Copper State's commitment is clear. So
Yeah.
as we go through the summer, we anticipate this being Q3, all the action regarding the licensing and the applications and all that. But I know we're going to be working with Copper State much closer to help the groups as they evolve and take shape. And we still haven't structured exactly how that's going to happen, but we'll find a way.
Yes.
So Jim, did you want to jump in on that one, or?
The only thing I was going to say was on that piece is I think that since it's such a young, relatively new industry, it's still a chance that it doesn't get away from you from the standpoint of putting all these pieces in. Only because I'm referencing back to other clients when this all started. I remember 5 years ago or so when clients then asked us, larger clients asked us to look at specifically the compensation, male to female, and it was a big issue. And then you looked at, the different ethnicities behind it. And we had some clients that we had to tell them, and we showed it on paper on, here it was clear. And they were like, we never would have thought this. We never thought this. And so when you put it on, you put it down on, like I say, when you put it down in the Excel spreadsheet, it doesn't lie. And that's what it was. And so they had to make it correct, and they figured it out. But they'd gone on for years this way. And so it permeated through the years. And so I think the great thing is that it's it's a relatively, you're new, you're starting out, you can get it right. And you can do it from the top down again. It all starts the top down, driving it. That's what you're looking for. You always want the best candidate, but can you find the best candidate that fits all your things? And so that's what I would just say. But that was my experience. And so it's really out there. Denying it is it doesn't work, because I've seen it.
And I actually have a story that might segue into this. We had
a lot of stories here.
So this is actually a little bit of a sad story, but it is a story, or it's a short one at least. But we had to grow, and we had a number of employees, and like many people in the cannabis industry, we realized that we had a pretty overwhelmingly Caucasian staff. We had one African-American gentleman on the staff, and we noticed that normally when we would tell our employees, hey, we're hiring, do you have anybody you can suggest to us, tell them, bring in the interview, most of the rest of our staff would bring in a number of people. Our African-American employee, I'm not going to use his name because I don't want to, put him on blast, but he basically, he never brought in anybody. And we went to him and we asked him, hey, why is it that you never seem to, bring in any friends? Or I think the one time he brought in a friend, it was another Caucasian gentleman. And he basically told us that he was the only one of his minority friends who was willing to work in a grow, because it was a very different scenario if an African-American, as an African-American got pulled over by a police officer for a traffic stop and he smelled like cannabis, than if his Caucasian coworkers did. This was a small town, Central Washington. But you have to realize that there are cultural sensitivities that have been built in because of the drug war and the way it's disproportionately impacted minorities. So you will have to make some, at least in my experience, an extra effort to recruit people of a more culturally diverse background. One of the things we like to do is reach out to organizations, that are helping, people in minority or lower socioeconomic environments to find jobs, is one of the paths through which we try to recruit. I think that, you know, like they have a Copper State, I think mentorship programs are really, really important as a way of getting diversity into the industry. One of the reasons I think personally that you find that once you get over a certain level in most of the cannabis industry, it's all one color and frankly all one sex. For the most part, it's because, you know, the other impact of the drug war and issues in our society is that a lot of minorities just haven't had the opportunity to get the education and employment experience that gives them the, you know, the background and resume they need to get those higher level positions. So creating a mentorship program within where you recruit people from those communities and then give them a path to, you know, gain that experience, gain that knowledge, and find those senior level roles in your organization is also very important.
While it's a sad story, Ryan, it could have been worse. You could have said he had no friends. I was waiting for you to say it. Turns out he has. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
But it is a sad story.
He had at least one.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was making a bad joke. I said he had at least one.
Well, that's good. And one of the cool things about this is that, you know, as people, more and more people become aware of this master course, that they can just tune in and watch this hour-long thing here. Yeah, there's only 26 licenses now. It might go up. We'll see. There's some talk about that. But there's a ton of people learning who are interested in social equity, who are learning about the industry and learning about the opportunities and making contact and saying, oh, you know what? I might go check out Copper State. They got a really good program over there and really good people, you know, that I'm interested now. So, you know, I got a lot of criticism because they said, well, somebody said, where's, if you look at the modules and on the MITA website and all the panelists, they tend to be white, you know, white males, you know, and they're like, where's all the diversity and the people teaching who are not white? And I said, well, hang on a second here. We have to provide the information that exists to help others, whoever they are, rise up. And, you know, we're not limiting it or restricting it at all. It just so happens that, you know, Ryan from Fingerhut, I don't even know if you're white. I really don't know. But, you know, he looks white, but he has the expertise and he's sharing it with everyone, you know, which is what the goal of this program is. So it's a very interesting, lots of people are out there being reached. So Caleb, why don't you ask a couple more questions? I have a couple questions here if you don't have any questions. But I think this
there
is
was a good one actually in the chat that I wanted to talk about, and I think Jim over at Orleaf would be able to help to answer this about healthcare options and some of the challenges that you saw in the past, and kind of how, I know you mentioned it briefly at the beginning, but you were able to overcome that with Orleaf based on reputation from what you said. So I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah. I think on the healthcare side, it's been one where the carriers have been, they've been open to take the cannabis clients. They've always been open. I remember 4 or 5 years ago, the United Healthcare people were just said, we're great. We'll take the cannabis clients. We like underwriting them. That's not the issue. The issue is we can't take cash for the premiums on a monthly basis. That's what their concern was back in, 2017, 16, 17. And that's where their concern was. But most of them are right. I know in the Colorado marketplace, I know that Kaiser, United, Anthem, they're all writing the cannabis clients. I know that everywhere they are. I know in Arizona, I know that the United, I have a master plan with United Healthcare. They're writing it. They like the cannabis space. So we have options. So like I come up with options, but I'm talking to other folks that are creating other potential options for cannabis entities also, right? That are looking at great options and great benefits for others also in the space. So yes, from a healthcare standpoint, whether it's you get the medical, you get the dental, you get the vision, you get those pieces can all be done. It's a matter of getting them priced so that way it's affordable for everyone, right? And getting the number of plans out there so that way you can do it. So the employees and the employers can have the share components of it all. But you can get that piece of it. The harder piece is also on the benefit side was always been some of the other pieces, and that was where the 401k was the key piece for me, was the harder one, because I'm used to using the Transamerica, the Lincolns, the Fidelities, and those guys. And they said, we'd love to do it with you, Jimmy, but we can't, not yet. And I said, well, they said, well, one of them said, if you would have not told us, we'd have taken it. And I said, well, that's not the way I work. So that was it. But on the medical side, they will write it today.
Yeah, nope, and it's
And they love the
premiums
demographics.
for them, and
Yep.
most cannabis clients are pretty good about paying their bills.
Yeah.
So, at the end of the day, that's what the insurance underwriters want to see, is that am I going to collect on these premiums?
Right, exactly.
Okay, yeah, so let's get back to the presentation here.
Yeah, this is
So
going
one-
well, Caleb. I like how I think, I always make sure that the attendees have a good feeling of the level of expertise of our panelists. And I think that it's great, everybody pretty much knows that there's 4 individuals out here that are available as social equity mentors. So this is really good. So thank you, Caleb. You're doing a good job.
Definitely. So one of the big pieces I wanted to touch on, because this is a question for any business, and it's definitely going to change depending on what position that you are fulfilling. But what's the compensation package? How is that? Is it unique to cannabis? Is it the same of what you've seen in other industries? I just want to open it up to anybody who wants to comment on that of developing, or maybe I mean, you don't have to talk too much about it on your personal side, but maybe some of the ones that you've seen throughout your career and how they've changed.
Or also explaining expectations, because I think a lot of people come into the cannabis industry thinking that they're going to get some sort of premium too or something. So,
Yep.
Brian, did you want to go first? You were shaking your head.
Yeah, I think you might have caught me shaking my head about the idea of a premium. If anything, at least in my experience, you're going to be taking a discount. I think Joan said it best. You really need to be passionate about cannabis. At least in my experience, when it comes to most of the line workers or whatnot, you're going to be taking, you're probably not going to be making quite as much as you might hourly for your, doing similar work in some other industries. This industry is really about passion. I think on a previous panel, we'd said there's easier ways to make money, but not easier ways to make a major impact on the world through what you do. And so it's really got to be about that as much as it is about making money. There's plenty of money to be made here. Absolutely, but it's not easy money. You're going to have to work very, very hard for it. One of the things I've definitely seen kind of change at the senior level, oftentimes you get paid a little bit less, and instead you get some type of, equity, profit sharing, something like that, which is honestly pretty common, not only to the cannabis industry, but to any startup, and almost all businesses in the cannabis industry, because of the age, are startups. But because of the way that regulations have come down, one of the things I've noticed about the cannabis industry is when it comes to like employee profit sharing or things like that, you tend to see less of that, just because, there are exceptions to the rule depending on which state you're in, but oftentimes those things trigger all sorts of issues with state compliance around disclosure requirements or things of that nature. For instance, in California, you can't pay someone on sales commission without making them a financial interest holder on your company. So you tend to see different forms of compensation and bonus structures than you would in a lot more traditional industries, especially when you're talking about year-end bonuses and things of that nature. On the other hand, I've worked in a couple of different industries, and we definitely throw the best Christmas parties.
For sure. I will second that.
We used to have a good Christmas party. Anyways,
They will come back. This was one year we had, it was a pause for the last year. They are coming back.
I'm a social creature. I just like to complain. Sorry. Yeah, Caleb, let's ask one more question of the panel. And one of your, I have like 3 questions here, but go ahead, ask your next question, and then we'll allow the panels to, say some closing words and wrap it all up. I think it's been really good.
Yeah, I would love to hear from Siobhan on about compensation packages. You have a lot of different departments, a lot of different levels you kind of touched on for hiring on department heads and management, on developing those packages. Like, what are some of the things that you see from a trimmer versus a master grower?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So it's definitely important to not go down the path of a premium for working in cannabis. I think in the earlier days, that was definitely more of a thing. I think that subsided a bit. And I have always been a big believer in try and get tried and true data through bona fide surveys, both in cannabis, and use tools like a pay scale, or even there's some very reasonable online tools, and do a comparison between what is the cannabis industry paying versus adjacent industries, and coming up with a competitive pay range, but a range that is sustainable, right? And then layering in other total rewards for your employees, it can be really, really effective. So you may pay, you know, a trimmer minimum wage or a little above minimum wage, but perhaps there's some sort of a bonus incentive for extra productivity, or something that is key performance indicator driven, and they get a little bit of an upside every quarter. One of the things that's been really awesome and a great motivator and boosts customer service and patient care at the retail dispensary level is it's very common for budtenders to be eligible, and others, even back of house employees, to be eligible for tips. And there's tip pools, cash tip pools. So that's something that also kind of adds to that total comp package. I've also seen a big uptick in benefits offering beyond medical and dental, but supplemental insurance. Some of these things you can offer for a very reasonable premium, but it really does draw in talent, and it's a great retention strategy. And then, of course, beyond that, beyond the compensation package, I think it's really just about the kind of workplace you're creating. And yes, it's really hard work. I think some people sometimes come into the industry with a bit of a misperception about how hard the work actually is. When I look at our employees in the greenhouse, I have the utmost respect for what they do on a daily basis. It is hard work. So there has to be that passion, there has to be that realistic view, but then you have to infuse the feel good, you know, employee of the month programs, other kudos and rewards and pats on the back. Making your employees feel super appreciated goes a tremendous long way and ends up being a lot more sustainable than maybe paying $1 or $2 than your competitor down the street. You will see that hanging on to those employees that are going to grow with you and be loyal is there through those means as well. So I just kind of see it as a holistic approach beyond, you know, the dollars and what they're seeing on their paycheck every pay period. That is incredibly important. That is definitely important to them. That's the basic needs being met. But there's a lot more to a good, robust total comp package. And it's really about the type of workplace you're providing, and the company culture and the fun and the appreciation as well.
Yep, barbecues, holiday parties, celebrating birthdays, all of those things that make an enjoyable work environment. It ultimately comes down to that those are all of the intangibles that it's kind of hard to put a price on, knowing that I have a fun time at work and I enjoy the people I work with, and I feel valued at work.
Absolutely.
Siobhan,
once all your bills are paid, of course.
I want to work for Cover State now, Siobhan. You guys have to write a job application thing for Shepherd. Job description.
I'm on it.
Shepherd. Oh, sorry. Let's anyone else on that question? I didn't mean to interrupt you, Caleb.
No, we're good. No, that's just, you asked for one last question, so I think we're good. I know you said you had a couple to wrap up, and we're getting close to the time limit here today.
Yeah, let's wrap it up. You know, but people have a really good feel for Siobhan and James and Ryan and Jim at this point, and really fantastic. And then Jim, of course, from Trevaro at first, but I know he had to step away. So this has been a fantastic panel, and it's been our great honor, obviously, to network you guys further into the industry and to teach at the same time. This is really a treat. So why don't we start, and we'll go in reverse order, I think it is. We'll do Ryan and then James and then Jim and then Siobhan. Ryan, James, Jim, Siobhan. And you guys want to sum up any closing thoughts about yourself, about the cannabis industry, about HR, words of advice for social equity applicants, freebies, or anything else? Ryan, you want to go first?
Sure. So just to sum everything up, the cannabis industry is challenging. So you need to be methodical about this, and that includes with HR, which people tend to be a little bit freewheeling about. But you do need to think things out, planning, tying everything together, your business plan to your benefits package, which I know has been one of the things a lot of people have asked about, to how you're going to recruit people, to your staffing plan and how you're going to space out that staffing. At the end of the day, it's a business, so it all ties back into money, but it's also a people's business. This isn't hardcore tech. At the end of the day, you're eventually going to be customer facing, whether you yourself as a dispensary or whether you're trying to specialize in, just cultivation or manufacturing. You're working with somebody who's going to run the front of the house. But at the end of the day, it's all about customer service and all of that. So you have to find that balance, which is, of course, the difficult part and the hard part, but the fun and the challenge and the opportunity of the cannabis space is figuring out how to run a compliant, meticulous, careful business that isn't so stiff that people don't want to have anything to do with you. So I don't know if I found necessarily that formula, but I've been trying now for about 6 or 7 years. So I'm still here, which is an accomplishment in itself in this industry.
And you're available as a consultant as well, correct?
Yes, yeah, and I'm available as a consultant as well. Like I said, we do licensing and compliance. We also do business planning and things of that nature. I put my email in the chat, or if anyone wants to look me up, rfingerhut@globalgo.consulting. And always happy to chat, even if you just want to, take a 30-minute consultation and kind of ask me a few questions. I believe that what goes around comes around. So I'm always got an open door.
Brian, thank you very much. Caleb or Dr. Barbara had to step away, and so did Will Humble. Caleb, do you have any closing questions for Ryan? Then we'll move on to James.
Just thanks again for being part of the panel. It was great to hear about your experience and how it's differed depending on whether you were out in the field and kind of how that's transitioned. And I think the one thing I learned about you is that the career can kind of take a lot of different paths, and you never really know. And sometimes try something and see. I mean, there's been a few comments in the chat room today about how to get positions within the industry and how to develop, and a lot of it's networking, taking classes, being involved in events such as this, and just getting yourself out there and asking, okay, well, what can I do? Scottsdale Community College and their tremendous courses that they're putting on to help to develop those skills. So just remember, your career is always going to be a work in progress, and how can I get better? And what can I do to gain more skills? And how can I network? So I'll just leave you with that. Networking is key.
Yeah. Oh, to James, your turn. Thoughts?
Yes, I want to thank everyone for being here. If you attended here, you are definitely, on the right course. Getting into the cannabis industry is a great thing to do, but you definitely need lots of planning, lots of due diligence, and lots of research. So if you're here, you definitely made one of the first choices correctly, and to get information from experts like everyone here. At Hempstaff, we're always here willing to help. We have no upfront costs or exclusivity, so you can sign a contract with us. We'll send you candidates. You can look for candidates on your own. Hire the best candidate for you. We want the cannabis industry to succeed. That's our most important goal. So if you just want to reach out to us and have questions about job descriptions or salary ranges, we're always happy to talk and help. You can reach out at info@hempstaff.com. We have training courses. We actually have a 4-hour Arizona dispensary certification course that just goes over cannabinoids, terpenes, the state laws, the different products. It's really for people that maybe aren't medical marijuana patients, want to get in the cannabis industry, but don't really know everything about what's in cannabis and what type of products are available and what they're good for. So we do have that going on this weekend, and we are also offering $700 off for our 7-year anniversary, any first-time clients placement. So if you sign with us and you get a placement, you get $700 off your first placement. And like I said, no exclusivity or upfront cost of that. So once again, I want to, wish everyone the best of luck on their applications and getting into the cannabis industry.
Well, yeah, thank you. And James, it's been great. Jim or Siobhan, which,
I'll go.
Jim? All right.
Yeah, I'll go. Yeah, yeah. Thanks a lot for the opportunity to just get into the panel. It's really great for me to listen to everyone else. I'm probably the newest one into this space, so for me, learning about this every day has been great. The part I really enjoy about the cannabis space is it's fast growing, it's moving really quickly, and it does remind me of the .com back in the late 90s when I was in a .com deal that we grew very fast also. And so it was fun back then, and you're right. Back then it was about the equity, the warrants, the stock options, everything else. That's what we were doing to incentivize, to get people to go, that enjoyed the workplace. We did a lot of those things. You bring in the lunch truck, you do these things. All those things were the great things that we were doing back then. But I enjoy this now because this reminds me a lot of that, and the opportunities are great, and it's fast growing, changing all the time, but it's really challenging too because of the complexity of the environment that we're in, where it's federally still not legal, but states are legal. So you have this complexity where it actually challenges. Great for me, it's challenging for me, but I love doing it because when I navigate through this, and then it's able to offer this stuff to everyone else. And so that's what I like to do. And so feel free to reach out. And you have any questions? Like I said, it's one of those things that's rewarding also to be able to help folks out there, because I really do believe, the space wants to do it the right way. Most employers want to do it the right way. We got to allow them to do it the right way. So that's what I'll leave it with.
And Jim, we're going to have you back for the art of selecting your business partner, because I know your depth knowledge of business in Arizona, and we haven't taken a deep dive into your history, but please Google Jim Valenzuela, and you're going to be a great resource, a great social equity mentor. So thank you. Caleb, did you have anything, or should I go to Siobhan?
You can keep going.
Siobhan.
Thanks for being here, Jim.
Yes, Jim. Thanks, Jim. Yeah.
Yes, so this was just an awesome experience for me. So, I appreciate the opportunity to share from my view, but I also learned a whole lot. I gleaned a lot from the panelists, and that's also a really awesome thing for me. I obviously love the cannabis industry. I can't imagine being in any other industry. It is definitely not for the faint of heart. It is challenging and evolving and ever changing. So anything that I can do to take some of my key learnings and make somebody else's life better as a result of it, I'm here, I'm open. I really believe in the networking component. And one of the things that obviously I love people, it's why I love HR and I've done it for so long, but it really is such a special industry because it's this convergence, for me anyway, of people, plants, purpose. There's a very philanthropic nature to our business. And it's a super historic thing to be a part of. So I hope that some of the information today, I'm sure it has been helpful. I know it's been helpful for me, and I look forward to the in-person on the 28th.
Yeah.
And whatever else I can do to lean in and help, I'm happy to. So people can feel free to reach out.
Oh, we'll find more ways. We're working on that. So Caleb, I'm going to do a little ceremony now. So we have a ceremony that we had at the end of the sessions. So this is my grandfather's machete from Oaxaca, from the 50s. This is his oldest machete. So I knight the social equity mentors, James, Ryan, Jim, Siobhan. You are officially now social equity mentors. So it's tied in. Thank you, James. Thank you. He's excited. He's like, I got knighted by a machete. So yeah. So anyways, folks, thank you for joining us. And we'll be back next week with another issue, another webinar from this master course. And please go to the website and see all the ones that you've missed and all the information on there. We're getting more and more views, and we don't really know who all is watching it. And honestly, we don't care, because we're teaching. The goal is to teach social equity applicants, but the vast universe of people that want to learn about the cannabis industry and network with their peers is just incredible. So I think we've got everything. Thank you for Copper State. Thank you to Weed Maps. Thank you to Trevaro. I know Jim had to step away, but Trevaro is an amazing company that has helped support social equity. So we really appreciate that and reach out to them. These panelists will be back and available at other in-person meetups that we're going to have this summer. And yeah, thank you for joining us and have a nice night.
Join us next week. We're going to be doing marijuana, wellness, and encouraging responsible use. So that's the topic for next week. So join us. We'll have another great set of panelists up here to talk about the development of the industry and the stigma of the industry and what we can do to help to shift public opinion.
Destiny, did we miss everything? Did we miss everything?
Got it all. Make sure you're signed up to the website to get our emails every week. We go live every Thursday around 3 p.m.
Yeah, and next Wednesday's networking meeting is available to anyone, and we're going to have that big discussion. And there'll be a series of Zoom people. Everybody will be live, so wear your Sunday best. Thanks, guys.
I'll see you all there. I'll be there Wednesday.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, James. Thanks, Siobhan. Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.
Thank
Take
you
care.
so much.
Good seeing you. Thank you very much.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.